Welcome! Fantastic that you actually chose to stay on the last session and come listen to me. Let me start by asking a question. How many of you have ever talked to Siri, Google Assistant, Cortana, and so on? Almost everyone, yeah. Awesome, you guys are great. Voice-to-use interfaces are rapidly growing as we speak, and there's a really good reason for it. We can control our lights, we can control our cars if we want with our voice already today. We can even order things on internet by not going on internet but just telling them to. Well, like the Alexa. How many of you were actually watching Jimmy's sessions before this? A couple of you. Great. Awesome. Many people are still a bit hesitant to use voice because it's a little bit awkward. My mom thinks it's a little bit awkward. She tries, but it's still a little bit awkward. And she only uses voice when she's at our house because otherwise she can't control anything. Everything is voice control at our house. But I think that many of the people who are trying to use voice interfaces that feel that it is a little bit awkward perhaps didn't have the best experience the first time. So perhaps they didn't know that they have to speak clearly or what language to ask them in, or they actually talk to a bot or Skill or Alexa or whatever we want to call them, and it wasn't well designed. So they were like, yeah, okay, so this didn't work, so voice isn't all that. This is why it's so important to actually design with voice in mind from the beginning and not wait until we're done and then think about user experience. Because we want them to have a really great experience from the start so we can actually get them on to the future where we live. All the big companies are making huge investments in these kind of things. We have Amazon with Alexa, we have Google with Google Assistant, we have Apple with Siri and Microsoft Cortana, and there's a bunch more. And this is just a few of them. I wasn't as good as Jimmy that actually looked maybe all of them up. So this is just a few of them, the big ones. So why is it getting so popular? I mean, I take it that we who are in this room kind of like to try all new technologies and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So let me ask you another question. How many words per minute do we type on average? So you're not allowed to answer that. He's my husband, that's why. Do you have a guess? Maybe 10? Another guesses? Yeah? 40? And that is actually the correct answer. So we type 40 words on average. Granted, most of us here maybe type a little bit faster because that's what we do for a living, but still 40. So how many do we speak per minute on average, do you think? Guesses? 120? Oh, great. Thank you, clicker. Surprise, it's 150. Well, that's anticlimactic. Yeah, so we speak 150 words per minute. Unless we are auctioneers, then it's up to 300 or 400. Crazy, but... So you see, it's even the fastest expert typer still will speak faster than they type. And also, most of us actually learn at a really young age how to speak, and we continue to speak basically every day, some more than others, of course. And also, why should I go and pick up my phone, type in my PIN code, which I always forget, and go to my browser, go into Google or Bing or whatever I want to use, and search for something, when I just can take my phone up and say, hey, Cortana, when is the next Avenger movie showing? And I will get the answer right away. So much faster. So let's look at some predictions for the future. By the year 2020, 50% of all searches will be made by voice. So imagine how much time or how many times a day you actually search for something on Google or Bing or whatever you're using. Half of that will be by voice in just 2 years. That's a lot. 30% of all searches will be done without a screen at all. So for instance, Alexa, Cortana, Google Home and stuff like that. And 75% of all US households will have a smart speaker at home. And I know it's a little bit iffy that I'm using America, but that's the only data I actually can find that when they actually looked that up or predicted that. So 75%. And I mean, in Scandinavia, we're kind of fast adopters, early adopters, so that would be at least the number we will have here. How many of you actually have a smart speaker at home? Yeah, a few of you. I understand why you don't, because most of them doesn't support Sweden yet, but in the front of future they will, hopefully. 40% of all adults already today uses a voice user interface at least once per day already. Cortana has over 145 million monthly users, and this is actually the newest number I could find, and it's old, so it's even more, I would say, today, that uses Cortana actively every month. Echo Dot, the one Jimmy showed, Alexa, that I call it, was the best-selling product on all of Amazon, all categories, this holiday season. So of all the things they sold, Alexa was the one they sold the most. Google Assistant is available for over 400 million devices. We can even get Google Assistant on our TVs now. 95% of all users have tried to use their digital assistant on their phone. As developers, we can actually take advantage of this. We know where the people are and are going to be. So, like I said, we learn to speak, most of us, really young. They already know how to do this. You don't have to show them how to use your app. They already know. That's kind of neat. I will go through what to think about before you even start to do or think about your voice user interface. We will look at how to think when you're planning your voice user interface and a couple of considerations that is good to also keep in mind to get the most out of the voice user interface. My goal is to give you a few tools and understanding on how to think when you're beginning to develop these kinds of apps and bots and assistants. So you can actually get ahead of the competition. My name is Jessica Engström. I'm a Windows Development MVP. I run a company together with my husband where we focus on future tech. And we're actually including UX in that because UX will be a future technology. Because if we don't do a good UX, people will not be there and use our stuff, right? I'm also the co-host of Coding After Work podcast. If you are into podcasts, that is where you will find us. I've been speaking to our house for a little over 17 years now, I think. Well, granted, it wasn't that technical in the beginning. Actually, we had these old 90s microphones that you had for the computer hanging in the ceiling, but still, we were talking to our home with various results. I have a lot of content to go through, so if you have any questions, I will be happy to take them in the later part of, there will be a question section. Today we can speak to devices that are really small or either they don't have a screen or like a smartwatch that had a really, really tiny screen, and now we don't have to cram in a full user interface onto that little screen, because we all know how difficult that is, because we can use voice. If the user doesn't know how to do a certain thing, they can just ask it, and you can tell them how to actually use your product. Less work for us, easier for them, win-win. So before we start to plan, we need to ask us a few questions. And one of the most important questions of all, I should say, is, will the user even benefit from a voice user interface? That is a legitimate question, because it's kind of the cool new technique, and I just want to try this out, so let's cram it in my latest app. And it might not be the greatest fit. So, voice should actually add value to the user experience, or be equally as good as your regular interface. Voice user interfaces will become even better and better. They're already pretty good today, but they will become better and better, and we can actually be part of that revolution, because I think it will be a revolution. Some people predict that we will have fewer and fewer screens in the future. Some even say that we won't have any screens at all. That makes voice user interfaces a pretty big deal in that case. Microsoft, Facebook, Google, they actually have frameworks for developers that we can use to build better user interfaces and stuff like that. The one, you guys who saw Jimmy's session, you know what I'm talking about, right? And for you who didn't, watch Jimmy's movie or session. Movie? Did you record a movie? So let's think about, when is voice user interface a good thing? When I'm in my home and I want to know if I need an umbrella when I go out, that's good, right? Or when I want to have read my schedule for the day or things like that. Perhaps I want to look something up when I'm on the go or in the car, and driving and texting is not good, so then I can use voice. Actually, I use voice every single day. I can't maneuver our home without voice. I think that says a lot about me, but still. Might not be a good idea to always use voice, though. There is a few places where it's not a good idea. Like when my health app is telling me in the store, like, you need to take your pill for that embarrassing ailment you have. Or this could actually happen in the office when I say, hey, Cortana, bring up all the documents that we're working on last week. And all of a sudden, all my colleagues get all their documents up on the screens, because we all use Cortana. Now, granted, most of these assistants we can actually train to only listen to my voice and recognize my voice, but in the beginning that's not the case. So then it's not good. Or when I'm really bored in the store and I'm just in line and reading emails, and I get it to read it up loud because I'm lazy, all of a sudden I get an NDA information email read up loud for all the store to hear. That's not even a good idea. So, yeah, don't do that. There we go. So, we have to decide what we are going to be best at. And this is because the things I talked about earlier, we can't just cram in voice because we want to, but it should be beneficiary. And it's also good because we need to stand out, right? Because we want them to download our application and use our applications. So a really good way to start is to say, my app is the best in its category, and then you fill in like a short description sentence. And it's not helpful if the sentence is, at being an app, because that's not narrowing anything down, right? So try saying my app is best in its category at telling departure times for buses. Or even better, you can say departures for buses that are close to the user, because we know most of these are actually geolocation aware, so we can actually do that. We can give them the information that is actually relevant to them. So being this specific will help us to sort out scenarios that is most important, that we should focus on and really do a good job of. And it will also sort out the scenarios that could come in version 2, or maybe just be scrapped because it's not that good. We also need to try to find out why our app will be better than the others. And when I say app, I mean all of the kinds of skills, actions, bots, assistants, what have you, but it's just easier to have one collective name, so I dub them apps. So include that in your best at statement. What makes it unique? Because what will happen if you don't do this step is that you will end up with a weather app that also tells fart jokes. And it makes no sense. It's fun for the guys who actually like it, or like we say in Sweden, släppa väder. Then it makes sense, but yeah. No. So now we have this awesome idea, right? Yeah. So we have to start to plan. So let's go over to that. A really good way to start is with sample dialogues. And this might sound a little bit awkward to start doing this in the beginning, but it's really good. It's like an overview of all the things the user can do in your app. It's a really good way to see what the voice user interface actually will talk about with your users. But also to be able to look at it as conversations instead of just a bunch of one-offs, because most of these bots and apps are actually not conversational. They are a bunch of one-offs. I ask a question, they answer. I ask another question, they answer. Even if it's the same subject, it's still a bunch of one-offs, with a few exceptions. So, if we don't think about it as a conversation or write it down, it could be a little bit stilted, because we thought, well, okay, this is this function, it sounds like that, this is that function, it sounds like that, but when you put it together, it becomes a little bit awkward. So pretend that you're writing a movie script instead, and pick like the 5 top functions that you have, the most important functions in your app, and write that down. What would happen in the best case scenarios for those 5 things? But then you also need to think about what happens if it goes bad. So pick like 3 or 5 things that can actually go wrong. So you also have the conversation for that. So when you have written your script, if you will, or dialogues, read them out loud. And preferably, if you can have a colleague or a friend or your mom or whatever, read them with you so you can have one part each. Because when you write and you hear it in your head, it will sound good. But then when you're actually trying to have that real conversation, it can be a little bit awkward, because that's not how we talk. It looks good on paper, but that's maybe perhaps a little bit too formal or something like that. And this is a really powerful tool when it comes to user experience for voice. So when we're done with the sample dialogues, we can actually sketch it out. Sketching voice? Yes. Well, actually, we're actually sketching out the voice user interface flow, if you will. So it's basically diagrams that illustrates the different path that can be taken throughout your system. It's not more difficult than that. So you do that by listing all of the different ways, there we go, that the user can branch in your app. let's say we're designing the same app Jimmy was doing, an app that can tell departure times for commuting. So we want to know when the next bus departs. So there are several ways to actually ask that question. And if we handle this, I can make sure that the user can actually speak to us freely like they do in the basic. If I force them to use my type of syntax and that's the only one, it will become a little bit awkward to use. All of these different phrases are called utterances. But we don't need to put every single utterance in here because that sketch will be huge. Instead, we group them together in what is sometimes called intent. So this is a representation of all the ways I can ask when the next bus arrives. If you have a more open-ended voice user interface, like a digital assistant, Cortana, Siri, and what have you, you can group them together in even larger groups. Or if you have, you do a bot of your FAQ on your homepage, and that's a really huge database, you can group them together in areas instead. So you can have like one for booking calendar bookings, one for ordering stuff, one for search or messaging and stuff like that, or different categories in your FAQ. So you don't have like 10,000 stuff to sketch out. One of the things we also need to decide when we're designing for a voice user interface is whether or not you want to use visuals as well. Because some of these devices actually can use visuals. Will it have a screen where you're going to put your app on? Will it have a screen? And, well, you have a screen on your cell phone, on your smartwatch, and Cortana has it on the computer, and I think some of the new Alexa also has a screen. If it does have a screen, do you want to support it? And if it doesn't have a screen, do you want to support it being able to project to a screen? So for instance, the Echo Dot can actually project to your computer or your Kindle or something like that, if you have that as well. So you need to take that into account as well. Do you want to use a visual avatar? And this is, of course, if it has a screen. So do you want to use a visual avatar, like a mascot or a digital assistant? I think you all seen these at customer services. There's a lady, and sometimes it looks like she's typing or talking and stuff like that. Some people are really comfortable with that because it doesn't feel like a robot. Also, it can actually make it a little bit more clear to the user when they're expected to do something, when it's their turn to talk, or they can also read if the bot understood what they were asking it to do. So, if we decide to use a visual as well as a visual as well as the voice user interface, it's important that we actually implement it all the way. So not just in the beginning or in the end. We need to have it all through the way, because otherwise the user will be a little bit confused, like, oh, okay, so I look at my screen now, but not now, or when was it? And that's not a good fit. So if you're doing visuals, make sure you use it all the way through. So let's say we're doing visuals. We need to sketch them out. This doesn't have to be beautiful or anything like that. I can't draw for the life of me, but I still sketch. And this is also because then we know where the user is, how it will look, what we will say to them, and we can have a really good overview for the different states. And this is especially important if you work with other people as well, or a team or things like that, because especially if you have one designer or a design team, and then you have the voice user interface, and then you have the developer, because then you will have like a mismatch, and everybody thinks that they know what the other person wants, and it doesn't always compute. So that's a good idea to do. So let's say we want to order a pizza by voice. Who doesn't like pizza? I'm getting hungry now, right? So I want to order a large pepperoni pizza, please. 1 large pepperoni pizza, is that correct? Yes. Okay, adding 1 large pepperoni pizza to your order. Place order. Your order is 1 large pepperoni pizza. Shall I place the order? Yes, please. And now we're done. So this is the gist of what's happening when we're ordering a pizza online by voice. There we go. The order is on its way. I wonder if it will come with a large pepperoni pizza. If we use visuals instead, it can go a little bit like this. I want to order a large pepperoni pizza, please. 1 large pepperoni pizza, is that correct? Still looks a little bit the same, right? But here's the difference. I put up a visual, which means I give the user a little bit more time to answer, because if I'm listening, I need to cut off at some point. I can't listen forever, right? And what this means is that I can actually place order directly from my screen or by voice, and I have time to ask my husband if he wanted something else. And most of all, I can see that that is not a pepperoni pizza. That is actually a chicken pizza of some sort, so I can remove it from here. So there's a lot less steps, and I can catch it from the beginning, and I don't have to start all over again to get my pepperoni pizza. Because apparently pepperoni pizza sounds like chicken, right? So visual is another way to confirm that the system has understood what you're talking about. And we need to make sure that the user actually knows if you understand or not, especially when we use voice only. So let's look at a few ways of confirmation that we can give the user. So if we have voice only, no screen at all, we can confirm things by looking at confidence thresholds. And a confidence threshold is how good the speech recognition engine think they performed, basically. If I say, order me a dollhouse, it might understand that I said, order me a dollhouse, but it could be 90% sure, it could be 40. And if it's 40, maybe we shouldn't act on it. If it's 90, pretty sure it was right. So you can use this information and look to the threshold and use it differently depending on the result. Have you heard the story about the girl in the dollhouse? No? Awesome. So there was this girl. She was lucky. Her mom got an Echo Dot, and the girl really loved to play with Alexa because she was speaking back all the time, and she always had time to play with her and things like that. And one day she said, "Hey Alexa, do you want to play dollhouse with me and order me a dollhouse?" And she got a dollhouse. And I'm not talking about the tiny little dollhouse we all had when we grew up. No. I'm talking about this humongous, really expensive dollhouse. She also got some cookies. This was not, of course, approved by her mom, because I think that's like $1,500 or 15,000-ish Swedish kroner. So yeah, it was not approved. But she didn't know. So yeah, and this is not the end of this story. It's good now, but the local news got hold of this, and apparently they had nothing else better to do. So they actually interviewed her, and they cut back to to the anchors again and in the studio, and one of the girls said, one of the women said, "I can't believe how clever she was. How did she know how to say, Alexa, order me a dollhouse?" Allegedly, everyone watching that show who had an Alexa got a dollhouse. Yeah. So I can't really find whether this is true or not, step 2 of this story. I'm trying to confirm it, but still, you get how important it is. If they actually had looked to the confirmation threshold, they would have known that this is not legit. Because children, by default, their vocal cords aren't mature enough yet, so they will automatically have a lower threshold. Her mom, by the way, actually put a safety pin lock thingy on her Amazon account after that, but still. So we can use a 3-tiered threshold confidence check, I should say. So if the confidence threshold is between, let's say, 45 and 80%, we do an explicit confirmation and say, I think you wanted me to order a dollhouse. Is that okay? Or did you want me to order a dollhouse? Another method is to always confirm explicitly without double checking with the user. Did I just... What happened here? Yeah, there we go. I was jumping ahead. If we instead, like Amazon should have done, look, is the threshold lower than a certain number, like 45 or something, then say something like, we didn't get that, could you repeat? And if you're really daring, or if it's not that important or costs $1,500, you could use, like, if it's over 90%, just ship it. And that was what they did with no checking. So, something is off with this one. I think we might have Bluetooth interference. There we go. Another method is to always confirm explicitly, implicitly, without double checking with the user, like they did in the beginning. But for instance, if I say, Alexa, what's the best superhero movie? She will, of course, not say, the best superhero movie is, or I think you want me to tell the best superhero movie. She will almost say Deadpool, right? That's implicit. Burger King did a really fun thing, or they tried to. TV ads are super expensive, right? So they bought 15 seconds. And this is what they did.
15-second Burger King ad, which is unfortunately not enough time to explain all the fresh ingredients in the Whopper sandwich. But I got an idea. Okay, Google, what is the Whopper burger?
According to Wikipedia, the Whopper is a hamburger consisting of a flame-grilled quarter-pound beef patty, sesame seed bun, mayonnaise, lettuce, tomato, pickles, ketchup, and sliced onion.
Pretty smart, huh? Of course, it only worked with the guys or girls that actually had a Google Assistant, but still pretty awesome. Nice way to save money, if you control the data. If you were listening really carefully, you heard that they said, according to Wikipedia. Who updates Wikipedia? Well, let me tell you who does that. People. And people are not the nicest people always. And they updated very quickly, and it looked something like this.
The Whopper is a burger consisting of a flame-grilled patty made with 100% medium-sized child with no preservatives or fillers, topped with sliced tomatoes, onions, lettuce, cyanide, pickles, ketchup, and mayonnaise, served on a sesame seed bun.
Yeah, so if you don't control the data...
You're watching a 15-second...
What happened was, Burger King, they were like, yeah, but I know. We can go in and actually edit it again. So probably some intern had to be on Wikipedia all the time. Of course it didn't work because of the internet. So they ended up having to stop the invocation, and also they locked the actual Wikipedia page. And I don't think we tried to actually ask what a Whopper was, but it answered something like, yeah, it's when something is super funny. So I don't know. No. Sometimes we want the voice user interface to perform a task, like turn on the lights or the heater or something like that. Do we have to confirm then? If I'm turning on the lights and I can actually see the light going on? Maybe not. Unless it takes like a few seconds to actually execute, because then I don't know, for a few seconds, I don't know, did she hear me? Should I tell her again what's going on here? So if it's going to take a few seconds to actually execute, or if it's something that the user won't see or notice in the beginning, like turning on the heater, that's not going to take 5 minutes. I'm not going to notice that for another half an hour or so. Then it's good to do some sort of confirmation, but you don't have to say, I will turn on the living room radiator now or something. Just say, okay. Alexa does that really well. I say, please turn on the kitchen table lights, and she says, okay. And then a second later, I will actually see the light go on. Sometimes we don't even have to act on the information given by the users. There can be instances where we don't have to, like we have an open dialogue. I have an app for waking me up every morning, so I have an alarm app, and I turn it off, and my assistant says, "Good morning. How was your sleep?" And I said, "Okay, good, thanks." And we don't have to act on that good thanks or bad or whatever it is. We don't have to parse through that. We could just give a more generic answer, like, "Oh, thank you for sharing," or something similar like that. So we don't have to parse through all of that data, because it will be different every day, right? Visual confirmation, that is exactly what we did with the pizza app. Could be, did you take your vitamins today? And you can have a button yes or no. So I can choose to not speak, but I can speak if I want to. But you can also have buttons. Or more complex things like I ask Cortana, what's my to-do list? Or what's on my to-do list? If I'd ask Cortana that, she would speak for weeks, I think. And it's not that good idea actually reading up 200 items on my to-do list. So what you could do is use visuals. Then you could actually show all the 200 and I can scroll through them. If you want to use just voice, you can start by saying like a couple of them, and do you want me to continue? Do you want to hear more? And things like that. But don't just talk for weeks. That's not good. And this also makes it easier for me to consume the data when I have it in front of me like that, if we have visuals. So, consideration stage, because now we have the best idea, we have an awesome plan going on, and we also have a few other things to consider when it comes to voice user interface. Are you going to have a command and control type of interface, or do you want to have a conversational mode? And like I mentioned before, conversational is kind of being a little bit overused, because we are usually not having a conversation with these kinds of bots. But that is still a decision we have to make. I recently talked to Cortana, if we're speaking of conversations, and it looked a little bit like this. So I asked her who she is and how old she is. Turning 4 this year. Where she's from. She's doing excellent. She has a fantastic superhero, I would say. And she can turn into Yoda. That's a good superpower. And I thanked her for her time, and we were done. So did I just have a conversation with her? I mean, it was a lot of contextual stuff, right? No.
You asked questions,
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So it's a bunch of one-offs. But it felt for me like a conversation, but this isn't conversational. So that is the tricky thing. We think we're having a conversation, but it's a little bit tricky. But it's kind of, well, actually, most voice user interfaces, I would say, is command-based and not conversational. There is a few exceptions, of course. I know Cortana has a few exceptions. I know Google Assistant have a few exceptions, but it's only when it comes to a certain area in a certain way that you actually have a real conversation. Alexa, you can ask, buy me a dollhouse, and she will say, okay, you bought this brand before, do you want me to order the same thing again? So she will actually know what I'm talking about when I say order the same. So she knows that, and that's the key word. To be able to have a conversation, you usually need to be able to remember what you have talked about before. It could be a second ago, a year ago, or a month ago. Like if you sit and talk to your friend and you're like, oh, I was just in Las Vegas, it was awesome. There were like white tigers and parties and all of that stuff. And you say, oh, that sounds so fun. I really want to go. And then I say, let's go next month. And you're like, I don't understand. Go where? That's not a conversation, but that's what's going to happen with the bots. If you want to be a little bit more constrained, and not have to use or handle the natural language understanding yourself, you can use command and control mode, and that's where most of us will actually end up because it's so much easier. So that means that we have a series of commands and some way of executing that command. But be careful to with open questions, not asking open questions. So for instance, if the pizza bot would say, hi, I'm your pizza bot, how can I help you? I'm used to Cortana, I'm used to Siri, I'm used to all of these digital assistant. I will, for some reason, think that she can order me movie tickets. Or he, whatever gender the bot is, it perhaps. But it can't. The only thing it can do is actually give me pizza. So it's better if the pizza bot would say, hi, I'm the pizza bot. Are you hungry or do you want a pizza? So you are, in your first greeting, actually training or setting the expectation of the user in the beginning. And they won't be disappointed when you can't order them movie tickets. And setting the expectations in the beginning is really good because then they won't rage quit your app. I'm one of those rage quitters, I admit it. We can offer first time they use it, we can offer like a walkthrough or a quick guide or what have you to actually let them know what you can do with your system. We can also actually take advantage of that little endorphin boost that they will get when they completed their first voice user interface in your app for the first time by saying something like, oh, you did that really good. Did you know we can also do this? Or have you tried doing it this way? So we can actually get that in at the same time. Giving clues like Cortana does here. She's saying, try saying, are you a ninja? I actually know the answer, but you actually have to ask her yourself because I'm sworn to secrecy. Okay? Yeah. This will actually give the user a little bit more positive mindset, if you will, because then they will know what to do, but you're not pestering them at the same time. So that's good. Discoverability is another really good thing to think about because I have been a Windows Phone user since it came out, and then lately there hasn't been that many Windows Phone left on the market, and mine broke. So I went over to an Android. I have never used an Android in my life, but I'm kind of tech savvy, so it went okay. But all of a sudden, I by mistake, got to know, I didn't know how I Google searched it for some reason, but I got the knowledge that my camera, if I hold it up and just say cheese, or if I count down from 3, it will actually take a picture. So they're using voice command, but I didn't know of it. That would be great, because then I don't have to like accidentally move the camera when I'm pushing the button, right? But they didn't tell me. There was no way. I actually looked in the app. I couldn't find any information that they actually was voice that I could have used. So that's a really great example of piggybacking of the user's natural speech, because they already know how to say cheese, right? You can also give smart examples, if you will, by asking the user questions like date of birth. And we all know this. If we are on American web pages, we get a little bit confused because they switch around the dates and the months, right? At least I get confused. But if we say to them, please give me your birth date by day, month, year, I have to think like, what is a day? Okay, that's 29 and the day month. Maybe not that slow, but it still will make me think a little bit. If we instead say something like, what's your birth date, such as 29th of January 1975, that will make it so much easier just to switch it out for my data. So that's, you're giving them a clue on how to proceed with that. Sometimes discoverability isn't enough, and the user wants to know what else they can do in the app. Like me in the camera app, I wanted to know what else can I do. You have other awesome features. So make sure that the user can ask for help. And that could be using visuals like we talked about before, or you can just read an app like we also talked before. So, but make sure that they can ask for help. You can even send them to a web page if that makes you even more comfortable, but as long as they can ask for help. You can also give them a couple of examples and just say, do you want to hear more, or do you like to do these things? You can do really smart things like use machine learning to figure out, you're always buying movie tickets from this particular movie theater. Do you want me to only tell you the movie times for that theater or in the whole of Stockholm? Another thing that is important is constraint responses. If the system say, do you want me to order a pizza? You have the option of yes or no. That's basically it. But what happens if the user say, yep, yes, thank you, that would be great, or something like that? We cannot interpret that as a yes. Therefore, they will still be hungry. And that's not good. So even question like, what is your favorite animal? That is not that constrained to yes or no answers. There's a lot of different animals. But if we only support cats and dogs, we would miss out on these cute guys. I mean, look at that. And that's not good, right? So if we look to what the speech recognition engine actually gives us back, what we get from that, we usually get a list called the NBEST list. I won't go really deep into this, but it's kind of like confidence threshold, like we talked about before. So let's say we're asking that question, what's your favorite animal? And the user say, that has to be a raccoon. And this is what I get back. Raccoon, balloon, I don't know. I'm from south of Sweden, I speak differently. So what would happen if we are not looking at this list, we would have no animal at all. But if we actually parse through that, we could see it's actually a raccoon. Have you seen this awesome video? No? Let's do it.
What's the buttons?
Oh no, they installed voice recognition technology in this lift. I heard about this.
Voice recognition technology? In a lift? In Scotland? You ever tried voice recognition technology?
No.
They don't do Scottish accents.
11.
Could you please repeat that?
11!
11. 11.
11!
Could you please repeat that?
11.
Whose idea was this? You need to try an American accent. 11. 11.
That sounds Irish, not American.
Doesn't it? 11.
Where in America is that? Dublin?
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that?
Try an English accent, right?
11. 11. We for the same part of England as Dick Van Dyke.
Listen, yours then, smart-ass.
Please speak slowly and clearly.
Smart-ass.
11.
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that?
11. If you don't understand the lingo, away back home to your own country.
Ooh, is that talk now, is it? Away back to your own country?
Oh, don't start, Mr. Bleeding Heart. How can you be racist to a lift?
Please speak slowly and clearly.
11. 11. 11. 11.
You're just saying it the same way.
You want to keep saying it until I understand Scottish, alright? 11. 11. 11. 11.
I'll just say it's anywhere, you cow. Just open the doors.
This is a voice-activated elevator. Please state which floor you would like to go to in a clear and calm manner.
Calm. Calm. Where's that coming from? Why is it telling people to be calm?
Because they knew they'd be selling this to Scottish people who'd be going off for nuts at it.
You have not selected a floor.
Aye, we have! 11!
If you would like to get out of the elevator without selecting a floor, simply say, "Open the doors, please."
Please? Please? Suck my wally.
Maybe we should just say please.
I'm not begging that for nothing.
Open the doors, please.
Please? Pathetic.
Please remain calm.
Oh, fine! Oh, you went up tonight. Get up now. Hey, just wait for it to speak.
You have not selected a floor.
Ah, mules, you cow! You don't let us through these doors. I'm going to come to America. I'm going to find whatever desperate actress gave you a voice, and I'm going to go in an electric chair for you.
Scotland, you bastard!
Scotland!
Scotland!
Scotland! Freedom!
Going up?
That would actually be me if we implemented that in Stockholm, because I'm from south of Sweden, so they wouldn't understand me either.
This is a very everyday problem. You call SL customer service, for example, and the machine asks you what you want help with. But whatever you say, it will always connect you to customer service.
Yeah, that is the problem with today's customer service on the automatic ones. They can't seem to understand us, really.
So you always get off the elevator.
Yeah. Or not going at all.
Yeah, you get off on the same floor.
Yeah. I wouldn't have to take the stairs, I think. If you're not developing for Alexa, Cortana, or Google Assistant and so on, that is the mainstream ones, you have to think about things like, do you want to use text-to-speech, or do you want to record a little bit of snippets of words or sentences to get that a little bit more natural language that we can actually have. Other things to consider is, do you want to have a button to push to talk? Some of them have, usually in the app you have, on the phone you have to click a button to talk if you don't have an invocation word. There are a lot more considerations to think about, but this is a really good start to just keep those things in mind. I don't think we have time for questions. No. So to summarize, think things through before. Really think it through. Do you really want to use a voice user interface? Will your user benefit from a voice user interface? And when you start planning, do so with sample dialogues, flows, and mock-ups, so you can actually see the whole flow in front of you. and consider different ways to enlighten your solutions. I hope that I have given you a few tools and things to keep in mind to get you started on voice user interfaces, and you can get ahead of the competition. Let me leave you with a short story about how things can go really wrong if you don't think things through. There was this guy in Springfield, Missouri. He is kind of like me and my husband. He likes gadgets. He likes home automation, and one day he realized that his house is dumb, so he needed to upgrade his house. So he did so. He went to the store and he bought basically everything that said works with Apple HomeKit. Philips Hues, he bought Ecobee thermostats, temperature sensors, an August lock, so he can actually open the door for his dog walker during the day without giving him a key. Because we all know giving out keys is a security threat, right? So he had, the pride of the home was an iPad in the middle of the home. It got like front and center in the living room, and he controlled everything from there. His friend came over, he's also his neighbor, and he showed him, like, look at this, I can just say, hey Siri, do this, do that. And also, I don't ever have to, when I'm carrying a lot of things, I don't have to put them down to actually get my keys and open the door, because Siri will know where my phone is close to my home. She will unlock the August lock and let me in, so I don't have to juggle all these heavy things I bought, or groceries or what have you. And he showed his friend all of these things, and his friend was super impressed. He's like, you live in the future. And they went about their day, and the day after, he came home from work, and he was driving in the driveway and going to park the car. And he met his friend, and he said, oh, hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar from you? And he's like, yeah, sure, just let me grab my things and park my car. And he's like, no, you don't need to. So he went up to his door, and he said, hey, Siri, unlock the door. Imagine his face when he realized that his friend just unlocked his door without a key, without permission, without anything. Yeah. So use what I have taught you today, and don't repeat that, and create the next generation of voice user interfaces. Thank you.